Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah, in his book Zadul Ma'ad and in his book Jala'ul Afham, in each of these books he mentions that there are 5 things which are upon the person who hears the adhan or the iqamah. So they are, fairly briefly, so this will be a summary inshallah of what we had towards the end of the chapter, that firstly, what's upon the person who hears the adhan or the person who hears the iqamah? Firstly, that he repeats the words of the mu'adhin in the adhan and the iqamah. And we had that with regard to repeating the words of the iqamah, then this was the saying of the Shafi'i scholars, the Hanbali scholars. It was mentioned by al-Nawawi, al-Hafidh ibn Hajar, by Ibn al-Qayyim, and it was the position of Shaykh al-Albani and Shaykh ibn Baz, rahimahumullah. That not only do we respond to the mu'adhin when he gives the adhan, but likewise when he gives the iqamah. And we had the point that with regard to, or an exception to that is when the mu'adhin says, Hayya ala salat and Hayya ala al-falah. His call, come to the prayer and come to success. That in that place, that the person says instead, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. The person's response says, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. The evidence for that being the hadith of Umar radiallahu anhu, reported by al-Bukhari. And we had some slight difference. We had the saying of Shaykh al-Albani that there are 4 sayings of the scholars what he should say. And Shaykh al-Albani's particular view was that sometimes he should say the same as the mu'adhin. He just says, the person who responds, Hayya ala salah, same as the mu'adhin. And he says, Hayya ala al-falah, same as the mu'adhin. And this was the position of Ibn Hazm and some other verifiers. And the position of some of these scholars, a number of the scholars, or the majority of the scholars, is that when you hear those 2 phrases, Hayya ala salah and Hayya ala al-falah, that you say, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. As for the rest of the adhan and the rest of the iqamah, then you just say the same as the mu'adhin says. And the proof being the hadith of Abdullah ibn Amr, reported by Muslim. So that's the first thing that's upon the one who hears the adhan or the iqamah, that he repeats the words which the mu'adhin says. The second matter which is upon him is that when the mu'adhin says the 2 testifications, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah and Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, when the mu'adhin has said those 2, then that the person hearing, he says, Wa ana ashhadu, or he says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, wa anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu, raditu billahi rabba, wa bi Muhammadin rasula, wa bil islami dina. And the proof for that being the hadith that we had, all these hadith occurring in the chapter, hadith reported by Muslim, from the hadith of Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam heard the mu'adhin and then he said that. And we had that some scholars say this should be said after the adhan, but however some of the scholars say no, it's said, where we mentioned it here, during the adhan. And that was the view of Shaykh al-Albani and Shaykh ibn Baz and Shaykh al-Uthaymeen, rahimahumullah. That is said during the adhan after the shahada. And the reward that was mentioned for that, for saying that, is that a person's sins are forgiven. If he says that, his sins are forgiven. Then the third matter that's upon the person who hears the adhan and the iqamah is that after finishing responding to the adhan and the iqamah, then the person supplicates for salat upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the proof for that was again the hadith of Abdullah ibn Amr, reported by Muslim. And the reward mentioned for that is that Allah sends salat upon that person. Whoever sends salat upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam once, Allah sends salat upon him 10 times over. Then the fourth matter that's upon the person who hears the adhan and the iqamah is to make dua, to make supplicate for al-wasila, for that special singular position of closeness for Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The proof being, again, the hadith of Abdullah ibn Amr radiallahu anhu. And that he makes that dua with the wording, Allahumma rabba hadhihi da'wati tammati was salati al-qa'ima, to the end of what we had. The same, that being in the hadith of Jabir. The wording that we use being in the hadith of Jabir, reported by al-Bukhari, again in the chapter. And the reward for that was mentioned was that the intercession of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam becomes binding for the person who does that. And then the fifth and last thing that Ibn al-Qayyim mentions that is upon the person who hears the adhan and the iqamah is that he makes dua. After doing all of that, those four things, that he makes dua. He makes dua for general dua, whatever dua is he wants to make. And the proof for that was the hadith of Anas, reported by Abu Dawud and at-Tirmidhi, the hadith which is sahih, authentic, and was the last hadith in the chapter. And the reward for that, it was mentioned that such a dua will not be rejected. The dua between the adhan and the iqamah will not be rejected.